Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with the trial of Lindsay Clancy, the Massachusetts mother charged with murdering her 3 children. Her future is now in the hands of 9 women and 3 men. After 85 witnesses and 5 weeks of testimony, jury deliberations began today in the 36-year-old's murder case. Judge William Sullivan has instructed the jury to consider first-degree murder charges in addition to lesser charges of second-degree murder or manslaughter. They can also reach a straight not guilty verdict or not guilty by reason of insanity. But before deliberations began, jurors heard closing arguments from both the prosecution and the defense.
Being told, no, we can't help you. Calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you. Calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it.
So why did she specifically do it? She was depressed. She was exhausted. She was done. But those kids were her protective factor. Those kids were keeping her from ending her misery. And so she had to remove the protective factor.
Clancy has admitted to killing her 3 young children in their Massachusetts home back in 2023. But Clancy has pleaded not guilty. She and her defense team argue she was over-medicated and suffering from postpartum psychosis at the time. Experts at the Cleveland Clinic say postpartum psychosis is very serious and very rare. It affects around 1 in 1,000 mothers up to 6 weeks after giving birth. Throughout Clancy's trial, hundreds of supporters, as you see there, both men and women, have been inside and outside the court to raise awareness for maternal mental health and postpartum disorders. CBS News correspondent Shanelle Kaul has been inside that courtroom throughout the trial. Shanelle, if you could give us a sense of what the mood was like in the courtroom today and just how it appeared some of those jurors were responding to those closing arguments.
Well, Jerika, the mood inside was somber and serious. Many of the jurors today showed up wearing more formal clothing. And as for Lindsay Clancy, she was there. Her demeanor was somber as well. And then during moments of Kevin Reddington, her defense attorney's closing arguments, she broke down into tears, crying when he held up photos of her 3 children who are now gone. The jurors now are tasked with deliberating. They deliberated for a couple of hours earlier today, but when they were listening to those closing arguments, they appeared to be engaged. They appeared to be emotional as well. But before they began those deliberations, Jerika, the judge reminded them they've got to leave their emotions aside and really focus on the facts and the evidence of this case to make this decision.
And Shanelle, what were the biggest takeaways from the prosecution and defense today that you should, want to make note of?
Yeah, I think one of the more surprising things for me was that prosecutors actually started with acknowledgement, with agreement that Lindsay Clancy was suffering with her mental health in the months leading up to January 2023. But then she made a point of saying to the jurors that this trial is not about maternal mental health. She said that topic is actually a distraction. And so that was surprising to me that she brought that up because, again, remember, the jurors, they are not allowed to look at their phones. They don't see what we see, presumably on social media, that this topic, as you mentioned off the top, has really become a big topic of conversation during the trial. Also surprising to me, Jerika, was that Kevin Reddington, Lindsay Clancy's defense attorney, did not spend a ton of time talking about the diagnosis of postpartum psychosis. That, of course, is what he's been arguing that she suffered with the night all of this happened. Instead, he spent a lot of time trying to poke holes at the prosecutor's larger case. He talked about some of the evidence that he said simply didn't line up with some of the promises they made during their opening statements. And perhaps, Jerika, this was part of his strategy because, remember, at the end of the day, the burden of proof here is on the prosecutors, right? Kevin Reddington doesn't need to convince the jury that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from postpartum psychosis when she killed her 3 children. He just needs to convince them that there's a possibility that she was.
That's right. Shanelle Kaul with the very latest, and I know that we'll be following this tomorrow as deliberations continue. Thank you.